Hello, everyone. Once again, my name is Kyle Renton. I work for Pacific Northwest Farmers Co-op. Been with the co-op for a long time. Really excited to introduce a new member of our team this year. Sophie Clavenaugh just graduated from WSU 2 weeks ago. This is her fourth day on the job. So far, we're taking it pretty easy on her. We're really excited to have her. She's mostly going to spend the summer working with Shannon and I in the trials. Eventually, this fall, we'll probably you'll be based out of that Roselia office, working with growers from, that Steptoe Thornton area all the way up to Spokane. So really excited that you came to work for us, Sophie. She's going to be drinking out of a fire hose. A lot of information to learn, but I think she's very capable. Sophie, if you wouldn't mind, just give a really quick bio about yourself.
Thank you, Kyle, for introducing me. Like Kyle said, I'm Sophie Clavino. Grew up on a family farm north of Colfax. Helped my dad out during our family harvest. Drove truck and worked at the grain bins right there. He also mentioned I worked for Syngenta this last summer, doing chemical research trials for them. Really enjoyed that. Did it right out of Hermiston, Oregon, and through Prosser and through the basin. And so, yeah, so I did that last summer, and then I just recently graduated from Washington State University, and I'm excited to join the PNW crew and learn from Kyle and Shannon and everyone that I'm working with this summer. So excited to be here.
So it's May 15th. You can see Shannon, we're wearing a little heavier clothes than we were on our first two videos that we made. I think today or right now it's about 50, low 50s, little chilly. It's hard to get acclimated to this weather this time of year for me. One day it's 80 and the next day it's 50. And the older you get, the harder it becomes to get acclimated. Really cool story here. We're out here at Becker Ranch, about 4 miles south of Genesee. This is actually a field of winter canola. The variety is 320. Roundup Ready, a really good winter variety from Cropland or Winfield. Matt came out here. Interesting here. We actually, I think in our last video, Shannon, we talked about getting some of those early September rains. There's just enough out here that Matt decided I think I'm going to give it a go. This was hard red spring wheat last year. Matt got out here around, I believe it was September 10th. Came out here, seeded the trial. Where the moisture was kind of spotty, you could see wherever he hit good moisture, got good seed to soil contact, he got really good emergence. Other places, that really wasn't the case. Matt came out here on April 5th, reseeded this with Cropland 9221, which is probably our earliest spring canola variety that's out there. Came out here with his 455s, punched into this. Of course, I already had the fertility out last fall with his case hoe drill. He got a great stand on that spring seeding. You can see the spring canola's got a little bit of catching up to do, but I think where 9221's a really early variety, it's really going to catch up with this winter type. Both of them actually have really good pod shatter resistance, even though there's probably going to be a couple of weeks difference in maturity. Hopefully the 320, most of that's still in the pod when they come in and harvest the whole field. Shannon, our canola trials are pretty small. We're going to do a lot of foliar work with our canola again, not only looking at variety interaction, but what products might be best suited. I think this is our fourth year in looking at foliar trials, mostly looking at fungicide interaction, and then the last two really looking at plant nutrition. Really found a couple good products. I think that's one thing with canola. It's kind of like chickpeas. They respond really well to inputs. And where canola is, 20 cents a pound versus, you know, 10-cent pound wheat right now on the board, you can really get good ROIs with canola, even at 20-cent prices. So we decided to come out here, really kind of wanted to talk about 320 reseeding. One thing I did want to mention too, Winfield has a really good reseed program. So They were able to discount. Matt got the 9221 discount on this seed when he came out and reseeded it. So, as you can tell, he might have had a decent crop if he wouldn't have reseeded, but there was enough holes out here. I think Matt and I decided it'd probably be well worth the money to plant some spring canola. Shannon, I'll probably let you talk a little bit about what we're looking at this year and some of the results that we saw in previous 2 years with some of these plant nutrition products we're looking at.
Yeah, as Kyle mentioned, we've looked at fungicides and nutritionals for about the last 4 years. The primary focus was fungicides, and that's really where it started. Last few years, we've introduced more nutritional packages. I think for me, canola is one of the most exciting crops because it's relatively new to us, and we've just continued to learn more and more about it. It seems like whatever we throw at it, we can continue to push yield, see plant responses, see different impacts on drought resistance. So it's been really exciting for me looking at canola the last few years. Some of the things we've looked at in the past for fungicides, we've really learned that canola responds really well to just a cheap strobe. And we've applied, Miravis Neo, we've applied Preaxer, we've looked at a lot of different fungicides, but it just keeps coming back to just a cheap strobe, a generic like a Zoxystar, anything like that. Canola responds really well to those fungicides. My crop has been one of the best we've seen. We've looked at my crop in the past. This is a group 3 and a group 11. So you have that strobe, and then you also have the propiconazole. And canola responds really well to that. But if there's a cheaper fungicide, just a group 11, just a single based fungicide, we're seeing really good responses from that. So I don't think it's too necessary to go out there with a really expensive fungicide. On the Palouse, we're really not seeing too much disease pressure in canola yet. I know, like the Canvas Prairie, they're starting to see some black stem rot, stuff like that. Here, we're really not seeing too much of that yet. And so I think just continuing with the Group 11, just a cheap strobe application, really shows good ROI.
Yeah, Shannon, I totally agree. That's a great assessment. I believe it was 2023. We had a real cold, wetter spring. That early herbicide application with that fungicide, any strobe-based fungicide is, you know, pretty much, the route I would go as well. But I think 2023, we picked up about 3.5 inches in April, or probably more so May toward the first part of June. Having that fungicide out early really helped that plant maybe get through those cold, wet soils better. Whereas, say, 2021, I believe that was the first year we really looked at foliar fungicide trials in canola. That year, that first bloom application, which would be about where the stage of this winter canola is at right now. I would consider this first bloom. Canola, after about 86, 88 degrees, the anther will go sterile. If you get 3 or 4 days of that, you'll see those blank pods on the stem. Um, that's really where having that fungicide out later, especially in these hotter summers, really helps maybe see some of those blooms from aborting, and we definitely get better pod fill as well. Looking at plant nutrition, Shannon, canola really responds well to nitrogen and phosphate. It's a really high sulfur user. What we're really finding out, really likes a lot of these micros as well. I think the NutriScan gun that we're demoing from ATP, we're going to use that in our canola trials as well, maybe make a prescription map. But with that in mind, we have a couple really good products that we've seen great results in. Last year, we had a ton of field splits. We had our big canola trial in Genesee and then up at Clark Farms as well. Saw some really good results. I'll have you mention those. So, timing wise, that like I said, the winter canola out here is just about that first bloom. I think you started seeing it was kind of in that starting to bolt rosette stage about a week ago. Now that we cooled down, it's a little slower to, the canola slowed down as well. The reseeded canola out here is just about 4 leaf stage. So a lot of guys with spring canola, that's probably when you're going out there, maybe making that first herbicide application. But I'm going to have you talk about plant nutrition, and then I'll give a little bit, what I've seen in the last 3 or 4 years raising spring canola, and maybe those really good timings when a grower should be out there, making those herbicides or plant nutrition.
Yeah, no, that's great, Kyle. So when we first started looking at nutritionals on canola, we really just started like with boron applications. Boron at bloom timing, and we've always seen good response. Boron really helps with the pod fill, helps support pollination, support flowering, and that's really where we started. And then it seemed like the more we introduced other micros, we could just continue to push yield. That's when we started testing Maxin, Vine, and Veg. Again, this is a Winfield product. I really like it because it's fully amino acid based, so it's readily available to the plant. But that's really what we started targeting, and we started running with that Maxin, Vine, and Veg, and then we could just continue to see yield being pushed. Really, as we do these treatments, we really give the most merit to our long-term averages, 3-year multiple site averages. And I shared this at the grower meeting, and it's in the compendium for you guys as well. But the product that I'm really the most proud of is the Max and Vine and Veg, because over multiple sites and multiple years of data, again, different soil types, different settings from here to Albion, Max and Vine and Veg has showed the best ROI over a long-term average. And again, we really try to look at and target those 4-to-1, spend $1, get $4 back. And we've seen a much improved ROI with the Max and Vine and Veg. Again, the reason we're targeting this is amino acid based, so readily available, and it really contains those nutrients to help support that pollination, support that pod fill. This year we're gonna look at different timings. In the past, we've always kind of targeted that first bloom or that early bloom setting, really getting it out there to help support that timing, support that pod fill, and try to lengthen that bloom as long as we can, because that's really how we see yield increase reflected. But this year we're gonna look at different timings too, and Kyle's gonna talk a little bit more on that.
This year would be a perfect example. We've had a fairly dry spring. We had about a 5-week window there where, really allowed us to get the spring crop in early, but we haven't had a lot of rain. I think this last weekend, around Genesee, probably right here as well, we picked up about a 1/4 inch. We're maybe supposed to get 3 or 4 tenths in the next couple days. You can see we definitely have the clouds. I hope they open up because we're definitely on the drier side. So with that in mind, without having those spring rains, we really haven't seen a lot of broadleaf emergence. I think after this last weekend, we'll probably see some more broadleaves coming up. So if you're a canola grower, really raising canola, to raise canola, you're really not growing it for that technology, for that Roundup resistant trait, you're probably going to want to go out there and make that one application. On the TrueFlex varieties, you can go up to 44 ounces now, which is a pretty high rate of Roundup. That's going to take care of anything that might be out in your field. Italian ryegrass, wild oats, wild mustard. A lot of growers are growing canola now to really eliminate that wild mustard in their pulses. So that one timing application is probably going to do a pretty good job. Around Genesee, looking here, this reseeded canola looks pretty good. We're starting to see a few flea leaf beetles out here. The canola is getting big enough now, though. Most of it's going to outrun it. Uh, but I'd really recommend that adding an insecticide when you make that first Roundup application. Anymore, I'd just throw it in. I think what we've seen, Shannon, in our trials the last 2, 3 years, bifenture or generic capture, that's come way down in price point. It's way more affordable than it was, say, 2 or 3 years ago. Way better product than, say, Warrior, or that generic pyrethroid. Uh, if you're really going after why you're raising canola, you have to. And number one reason why across the Palouse is Italian ryegrass. So right now, if you have spring canola out there, around Genesee, everything is still in that cotyledon to two leaf or true leaf stage. This is some of the bigger stuff I've seen. But getting out there early, maybe making that first application on Roundup, especially if you have a lot of Italian ryegrass coming, I think is probably how I would do it if I was a farmer. Going out there with that 22-ounce application, once again, throw in bifenture. We get about 2.5, 3 weeks with the seed treat insecticides. Uh, Lumiderm is on this 9221, and that's really what we're seeing is 2 to 3 weeks. That seed treat, we're going to get that residual. It's going to protect that plant. Once the seed treat wears off, though, that's when that seedling or cotyledon plant is susceptible to damage. So throwing in that bifenture, my opinion, is probably a better way to go. You're probably looking at that 250 to 350 a dollar an acre treatment, whereas you can say get a generic grizzly for about $1 an acre. But I would step up and buy that better insecticide. And then, if we happen to catch an inch of rain, in a week, we're going to get that next flush of weeds. And that's really where if you go 22 ounces that first time, you're kind of saving that next 22 ounces for later on. If it doesn't rain, we're probably not going to get that second flush. But if we do get that second flush, you have that flexibility to come out and make that second treatment. If it was me, I would almost wait till six leaf, just about when the ground's canopied over, or maybe you're starting to see that rosette stage where the canola hasn't started to bolt, but you're actually starting to see a few bloom clusters right there at the top of that stem. That'd be a really good time to come out, in my opinion, make that second Roundup application. That'd be a really good time then to throw in that vine and veg, your fungicide, and throw in another additional insecticide in there. Depending on the heat unit, you're probably going to go from that stage to full bloom, or in about a week. So getting it on then. Another thing to point out, seems like once canola gets this stage, a lot of growers want to stay out of it. They'll maybe wait and make that aerial application with an airplane, and by all means, that's a good way to go. If you remember though, canola really branches out. So if you're out there with say 20-inch tires with your self-propelled sprayer, a lot of guys are starting to opt to go that route. Granted, you're going to leave some tracks, but it seems like you come back in a week and those tracks are gone. So, it's going to, even though if you're breaking some stems, those branches are going to fill in that space. And that's one thing canola is really good about. I think that's where we're kind of finding out with the vine and veg. We're seeing that plant hangover, even though these are true flex varieties, they really handle Roundup. But the later you make that second application, that's where we're starting to really see that leg. I guess Shannon, maybe highlight on that a little bit more. I think that's something we've seen in a lot of fields the last 2, 3 years.
Yeah, no, that's great, Kyle. And on top of some of the application timings, like we work with a lot of growers that just have kind of gotten away from the split Roundup application and have really just moved to that full rate application later in the season. And that's really when we started looking at this is, you go out there with 44 ounces, probably rosette stage later in the season, apply that Roundup, and then we've seen that delay bloom up to 5 to 7 days. The plant has to metabolize all that glyphosate. It's kind of got a lag. We call it a hangover effect. And it's really trying to metabolize all of that chemical. And then we've seen that delay bloom up to 7 days. And so it really impacts yield response. And so that's when we really started looking at this at different timings too, putting that in with that application. And we've seen that delay in split application as well. It's just more prominent with that full rate of Roundup one treatment. But that's where we've really seen the max in vine and veg help with that hangover effect. We've seen adding that in with your Roundup application later in the season really helps that plant overcome that chemical, really helps that metabolize it quicker and get over that hangover over effect. And we're not seeing that delay in bloom anymore. And so that's pretty exciting with this. Kyle mentioned the NutriScan. We're going to continue using that in all the trials. We're going to use it in all of our canola trials as well. We've seen really good responses with this micro package, but we're going to use that NutriScan to see if we're missing anything, see if there's anything we need to add. We really want to try to continue improving our data, improving our packages, see if we're missing anything, and trying to bring the best product to you guys. And so we're going to continue using that. We're really excited of what we're learning.
Yeah, so this year we're actually selling vine and veg. I think we saw good enough results. Really, no one else in the area had been providing it. I think Bo Blashley with Winfield finally said, we're seeing such good responses. I know in his farm down in Pomeroy, they're usually planting 800 to 1,400 acres of canola. Bo used it on all of his acres last year, really due to all of our trial data. I think if I tell farmers, in our yield trials over the last 4 years, I think 21, of course, was the worst. We had about a 1,400 pound average. Next year, 23, that was kind of the best year. In our trials behind Genesee, we're cutting 3,500 pound canola. Phenomenal. Last 2 years, we've been more in that ton to 2,500 pound range. I tell guys expect about a 10% yield bump with this. Pretty consistent. So if you're say you're cutting 3,000 pound canola in the draw bottoms, you're probably going to see at least a 300 pound yield response with vine and veg. 20-cent canola, that's $60 an acre, additional income on a $6 or $7 an acre product. Let's say the hilltops out here, you're going to be cutting 1,500 pound yield. You're still going to pick up enough yield response. You're probably going to see a 2 or 3 return on that $1 spent. Uh, if you're cutting ton yield on the toe slopes, you're going to be at least a consistent 200 pounds. So this is probably one of the products that we've tested long enough. We had a lot of field splits last year, Shannon. We had a big farmer strip trial that Jack and Ben Herman did, where we ran this in as well. So we're pretty confident in this. Shannon mentioned NutriScan. Maybe there's a micro or two that's missing out of here, and that's really what we're looking at. What kind of deficiencies this canola crop might have, especially when it starts hitting that, first bloom, and especially in these hotter summers, or if we only have a 2 week bloom period, this canola has to put a lot of pods on and fill those pods in a short amount of time. And once again, canola is that one crop that probably responds better than any other crop that we're finding out on the blues. So just to wrap this up too, our summer field days, June 26th is going to be our Oaksdale field day up north. We'll send out a flyer. We'll have pesticide credits, feed you guys a really good lunch. Hopefully have some really good door prizes. But June 26th, it'll be in the morning. Like I said, up around Oaksdale, we have some really good trials up there this year. And then in Genesee is going to be July 1st. So hopefully that doesn't interrupt anyone's camping plans that week. It's going to be a Tuesday. I think July 4th on a Friday. So hopefully you can either make it up north or make it to Genesee. We're excited to take everyone through the trials and really give you a hands-on of what we're doing this year. So thank you for watching this.